Okay, good morning. Good morning, everybody, to this online information session for the Interregional Innovation Investments calls for proposals for 2024 for Strands 1 and 2A. My name is Eric Koch. I'm the head of the I3 instrument sector in the EIC and SME agency, ISMEA. Before I explain to you the way ahead, the agenda and the speakers, of course, I would like to explain a bit of the housekeeping rules for this webinar. So if you could please put the next slide. So in terms of the housekeeping, first of all, note that your camera and your microphone will be switched off by default. There's no way to be switched on. This meeting will also be recorded. So if you do not want your name to appear in the recording, then please, when we are on the Slido session later for the Q&As, for the questions and answers, don't put your name, just leave it open and it will be anonymous. You will be anonymous. And then I would like to also ask you later, before switching off, to take a moment and reply to our evaluation survey for us to improve our next information session. Next slide, please. Which is actually already, I will show this slide later, but when we do the Slido session, then you will have to access through this code, the I3 instrument tag, and then you will be able to ask your questions. Next slide, please, which is the agenda. And I would like to warmly welcome and introduce now our two first speakers that will kick it off, and that is Catherine Wendt from the DG Regional and Urban Policy. She is the head of unit and unit G1 for smart and sustainable growth. And we have Birgit Weidel just after Catherine, head of department for Department I at ISMEA and responsible for innovation ecosystems, single market program entrepreneurs and consumers. And with that, I would like to also let you know that we left a bit more time for the Q&A. So we have 40 minutes, plenty of time for you to answer your questions. Catherine, it's a pleasure for me to introduce you, and you have the floor.
Eric, thank you very much indeed. Good morning, everybody. I'm very happy to be here with you this morning for the info session. Some of you already know about I3 and the opportunities that it offers. So for some of you, it might be brand new. So for all of you, a warm welcome, and I'm sure that all of you will learn something today. Not least because we have made some important adjustments in this year's call, which relate to the role of less developed regions, to the consortium composition, and reducing red tape to align with national and regional smart specialization. Our aim of today is to ensure that all of these changes and all other call elements are clear, and that you have the support and the guidance that you need to submit strong applications for this round of I3 instrument calls, maximizing your chance of success. What we expect from a good I3 project actually is in the name of the I3 instrument. So I3 is about interregional cooperation. It's about bringing regions together, connecting diverse innovation ecosystems, and linking innovation participants with innovation leaders across the EU. It's about creating new value chains and enhancing the competitiveness of existing ones. I3 is also about taking steps towards innovation, creation, and diffusion. I3 is unique in supporting close-to-market innovation projects with an eye on commercialization and scaling up. And finally, I3 is about creating a portfolio of investments in different regions that complement and strengthen each other by working together. From advisory support, tech transfer, demonstration cases, to skill development, deployment of innovative solutions, I3 aims to increase EU competitiveness and reduce the innovation divide. Importantly, I3 also, of course, complements EU support available through mainstream programs at national levels. It's an instrument that we believe makes it easier to move from the exchange of ideas, in the framework of smart specialization partnerships, for instance, to real interregional investments on the ground. With these short words, I will conclude and wish you a very information-rich day today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Birgit, you have the floor.
Morning, and also a warm welcome on behalf of SME. Let me say just a few words who we are. It is the European Innovation Council and SME Executive Agency. We are, together with other agencies, entrusted by the European Commission, by the different Director Generals like Regio, with the implementation of a number of funding programs that have been established in 2021. And we cover in our agency the activities of the European Innovation Council, but also other programs related to small and medium enterprises, like the Single Market Program and the European Innovation Ecosystem Program, and last but not least, of course, the I3. Our main role as executive agency is really to manage the program and the implementation of it. So we are responsible for the publication of the calls for proposals, for the evaluation of the proposals we receive. We are then preparing the grant agreements of the selected projects. And we are then, of course, monitoring and being in contact with you during the phase of implementation of the project. And of course, we also provide feedback on the results that the projects deliver to DG Regio. So you see, we have a very interesting portfolio, and our objective is really to provide high quality support to European innovators, researchers, businesses, but also consumers, with the goal of fostering innovation, modernization, and growth in the EU. The I3 instrument is funded by the European Regional and Development Fund, and cohesion policy goals is really key here. As Catherine has explained, the instrument focuses on the commercialization and the scaling up of innovation projects to develop European value chains by supporting investments in companies, mainly SMEs. It encourages the participation of a diverse range of regional ecosystem stakeholders. It includes research institutions, businesses, civil society, and public administrations. The I3 instrument is a new instrument, and we are currently launching the third call for the Strand A and Strand 2. You will have heard already that with this call, we are also introducing some changes to simplify the implementation, and you will hear about them later. What we have seen is that the interest in the I3 instrument has been growing significantly. In the 2023 calls, the number of proposals that we have received has doubled compared to 2021, and also the number of applicants has tripled. So by now, we have 34 active projects, which correspond to a total budget of 145 million euro. And another 10 projects are in the pipeline. They are in the final stage of preparing the grant agreements. And they are part of the Regional Innovation Valley Initiative. So then we also have a number of capacity building projects under the I3. And if we add everything together, we have about 50 projects in total. All of these projects can be consulted on the EU funding and tenders portal, which I really encourage you to do because I think it's very interesting information. In addition, we are currently working on communication initiatives to share concrete interregional innovation investments related results and the impacts from the projects in the various shared smart specialization areas. So stay tuned, because I think this is also very interesting information. We are also quite happy to have a very good representation of almost EU countries in the I3 projects, with Spain, Italy, and the Netherlands having the highest number of beneficiaries. And our clear objective for the future is to increase the number of less developed regions, which currently receive a bit more than a quarter of the EU funding from the total I3 instruments projects. In addition, I'm also excited to announce the upcoming launch of our I3 support facility by the end of June or early July. This facility will empower public authorities, member states and regions, including all of their ecosystem players, to foster their innovation capacity through cooperation, experimental policies, and exchange of best practices. And really with the objective to develop innovation ecosystems within less developed regions. So I hope that today you will get a lot of insights and information how to prepare a good proposal. And I'm really very much looking forward to receiving a lot of proposals from you. Back to you, Eric. Thank you.
Catherine and Birgit, many thanks for warming us all up for this packed info day and for breaking the ice. And it's now a pleasure for me to introduce our next speaker, who is Tomislav Pinter from Catherine's unit. And he will dive a bit deeper into the cohesion policy background, which is the foundation of the I3 instrument. Tomislav, you have the floor.
Thank you, Eric. We can start with the first slide. I'll begin by highlighting the I3 instrument's role within the cohesion policy. You know that in certain member states, the cohesion policy is still the largest available source of funding for innovation projects. And over time, we have heard that there was a need to create linkages between regions, following the connections established along the shared smart specialization strategies. And this is exactly what the I3 instrument aims to do, to create linkages and facilitate the transition from interregional cooperation to interregional investments. And what to say now at the beginning of your project proposal journey? It's important to reflect on how your project fits into the broader scope of cohesion policy goals, starting with those stated in the regulation. And of course, make sure to check if you are in line with the policy background and the objectives of the call. Next slide. Following I3 mission to create new value chains and to enhance the competitiveness of existing ones, we have achieved wide geographic coverage. There are I3 projects across the EU, covering almost every state, with only, if I'm not mistaken, Malta and Luxembourg missing participants. And what is important for us and what we see as a success is the coverage of outermost regions. These regions are particularly active in the I3 capacity building strand, and projects encouraging the participation of outermost regions and addressing their specific needs and challenges can get additional points. Now, let's take a closer look at this map. As Birgit already mentioned, the areas shaded in darker orange, such as regions in northern Italy or, I don't know, southern France, Slovenia, parts of Spain, Portugal, or Finland and Estonia in the north, indicate higher concentrations of already active participants in I3 projects. These areas stand out for many reasons, and it's interesting to know that there is a good match with what we do under one of our flagship initiatives, the Smart Specialization Community of Practice, particularly with the S3 thematic platforms. So remember where these darker orange areas are, and let's move on to the next slide. This S3 COP, S3 Community of Practice initiative is led by us, by DG Regio, providing support for the implementation of smart specialization strategies across the EU. Among other activities, it supports regions and interregional partnerships with around 40 thematic smart specialization partnerships at the moment. And what is interesting to observe on this map is the strong resemblance to the previous map of successful I3 projects. There are indeed several examples where these S3 partnerships have secured I3 financing for their projects, with some partnerships having even 2 projects and even more in the pipeline to apply. So if you want to find out more or to become a part of these partnerships or even apply as a new partnership, a link to the page for the S3 community is available here. Next slide. And one of the advantages in preparing this year's calls is that we were now able to learn from the projects in implementation. We have established effective communication channels, starting from our participation in kickoff meetings to something that is becoming, I would say, like a sort of a tradition, the I3 Coordinators Day, organized by ESMEA. And during all these events, we meet together to discuss the various issues and practicalities encountered during implementation. And here are some key elements observed through their perspectives, so through perspective of project coordinators. They see added value in the focus on close to market activities. They appreciate the flexibility in forming consortia. There are partnerships and consortia with as few as 3 to 4 participants and others with more than 30 participants. As shown on the previous slide, those not yet active in existing partnerships see great potential and opportunity to build long-lasting connections. And they also highlighted some unexpected benefits. For example, the opportunity to attract new private investors who have increased confidence in the projects due to their success within the I3 instrument. Next slide. And now let's briefly go through the list of elements that we consider new or slightly different from our previous approach. ESMEA colleagues will explain the practical aspects of these and all other elements. First thing, as guardians of the cohesion policy, we were more precise on the role of the less developed regions. We also responded to calls for reducing the red tape regarding the alignment of projects with national and regional smart specialization strategies. While this obligation remains, it is now up to the project coordinator to confirm this alignment for all participants. But let's say, why is this important for everyone? This is important as more managing authorities for cohesion funds recognize the role of the I3, and with a certain number of projects in your region, you became an increasingly interesting candidate for further targeted support from national funds, where financing is also linked to priorities in smart specialization strategies. And finally, with the changes introduced in the evaluation procedure, in a way, we hope to achieve a quicker selection process, and the slight preference for relevance is a clear signal that I3 calls are becoming more competitive, and to handle oversubscription, we are emphasizing relevance aspects. And relevance ensures that the projects we support are not only impactful, but also focused on issues highlighted in calls as relevant. Next slide. So finally, best way is to learn from examples. Thanks to the communication teams within the existing projects, you can now see what works well and who has received our support so far. These are just 4 examples. but any other combination of projects will be equally, if not even more presentable. You can check the full list of funded projects on ASMA website, and by simply using this hashtag that you see on the screen, i3 hashtag on social media, you can do your own search. Here, for example, we also present one of the capacity building projects. And just to say that if your application is maybe less focused on concrete investments and more on the capacity building aspect and involves less developed regions, you might consider applying to our currently open i3 capacity building call instead of these calls we present today. That will be all from my side. Happy to answer questions later, and over to you, Eric.
Tomislav, many thanks for laying the policy foundation and the important policy foundation for all what we're doing here on the i3 instrument. And we're now coming towards the flesh of the bone of this information day, the concrete information about the two calls that are running. And I have a pleasure now to introduce two call coordinators in my team. There is Maya Felling from my sector. She is the call coordinator for Strand 2A, and then Virginie Perron, also in my team, and she is the call coordinator for Strand 1. Colleagues, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Eric, and good morning, everybody. I will start my presentation with some general objectives of the i3 instrument. So, Interregional Innovation Investment Instrument is a funding tool under the European Regional Development Fund and has a strong focus on small and medium-sized enterprises being the center of its activities. And as it was mentioned several times already today, but I will repeat it because it is very important, it also has a focus on creation of the cohesion between the more developed regions and less developed regions. i3 instrument promotes the creation of innovation, its transfer to new regions or to new sectors, which is innovation diffusion, and reinforces European and regional value chains. The objective of the i3 instrument is also to support interregional innovation investments by offering the consortia of innovation actors from the Quadruple Helix ecosystem all the necessary financial and advisory support for bringing their innovations to a more mature level. i3 instrument supports predefined portfolios of interrelated and mature interregional innovation investments in different regions, in more developed regions and in less developed regions that have a similar or complementary smart specialization priorities. It supports also the demonstration, market uptake, and scaling up of mature investments. Proposals to be submitted for these two calls can also build on the results from projects funded through different other programs or calls like i3 capacity building, Strand 2B, or implement or ERDF program, for example, that is funded from national and regional funding, or from Interreg, Horizon Europe, Digital Europe program, and also from the other EU funding programs. Next slide, please. i3 instrument basically contains three parts, or as you call it, three strands. Strand 1 supports investment in interregional innovation projects in shared smart specialization areas. Strand 2A supports investments in interregional innovation projects for development of the value chains in less developed regions. These two strands are also the topic of these two calls that we are presenting today. Then we have a Strand B, which is a capacity building strand for building the capacities of innovation actors to build value chains in less developed regions. Part of the funding is also dedicated to the technical assistance, like before mentioned I3 support facility, and also for some possible experimentation activities. The total budget of the I3 instrument for 7 years is 490 million euros. Next slide, please. This slide shows different levels of cooperation between regions and regional innovation actors. On the left side, in this orange square, there are 2 levels of learn and connect, where regions and innovation stakeholders are connecting and they are learning from each other by participating in many different networks, associations, initiatives, and in partnerships, like, for example, before mentioned smart specialization community of practice. And the success of the I3 instrument basically depends on these cooperations and in the capacity of participating partners to engage in the joint projects. The capacity building activities are therefore here included in the I3 Strand 2B and within the I3 support facility, and as mentioned in the smart specialization community of practice. On the right side in the blue, we have activities related to investments with the TRL levels from 6 to 9. These activities are like demonstration, commercialization activities, and the scaling up of the joint project, which are the main focus of the Strand 1 and the Strand 2A that are presented today. Next slide, please. Just to briefly mention what we mean by the maturity of the innovation project. The maturity of the investment projects means that at the beginning of the project, the TRL has to be, the technology readiness level has to be at least 6, which means the technology demonstrated in a relevant environment. And by the end of the project, these technologies has to mature to the TRL level at least 7 or 8 or 9. Next slide, please. So the specific objective of the Strand 1 of the I3 instrument is to increase the competitiveness and the resilience of EU value chains on the basis of interregional cooperation and shared or complementary smart specialization areas. The specific objective of the Strand 1 is also to develop of already existing or the creation of new interregional and cross-border value chains, a better connection between regional innovation ecosystems, and the cooperation between innovation actors, especially SMEs from less developed regions to the innovation actors, especially SMEs in the more developed regions. With the Strand 2A, Strand 2A focuses on reinforcing the integration of innovation actors from less developed regions in developing EU value chains, while creating opportunities for innovation and smart economic transformation in regions with the shared smart specialization areas. Strand 2A supports the innovation actors with investment ideas that are ready to be developed into mature business cases. It identifies new regional technological domains and market opportunities with the EU priorities, and it's bridging the gap between the supply and demand side to help innovation ecosystems to overcome market failures. The specific objective of Strand 2A is also the creation of new value chains in less developed regions and the integration into the interregional cross-border value chains with more developed regions. The objective is also the application and the deployment on innovative technologies and solutions in less developed regions, and the interaction and collaboration of small and medium-sized enterprises from less developed regions in the interregional and cross-border value chains with the actors from more developed regions. Next slide, please. There are three thematic priorities in the both strands, Strand 1 in Strand 2A. These are green transition, digital transition, and smart manufacturing. Digital transition, this thematic priority intends to support innovative value chain investments to boost the economy through green technology. This is what I'm talking about now for the green transition. Yes, so to boost green technologies and create a sustainable industry and sustainable transport. This also includes sectors like sustainable food systems, sustainable agriculture, clean energy, sustainable industry, building, renovation, sustainable mobility, and eliminating pollution. Digital transition focuses on the investments in business and in the public administration that want to basically transition to the digital economy. And then we have the last one, smart specialization, smart manufacturing, this thematic priority focuses on improving the delivery of new or improved products, processes, or services in the manufacturing industry and fostering a circular economy approach. So here we have industries like robotics, 3D and 4D printing, artificial intelligence, high performance computing, and other industries. Next slide, please. Expected impact is the same for all three thematic priorities mentioned before, and the list of expected impact topics is non-exhaustive. Basically, you can use those, or you can also add some new that basically correspond to the key performance indicators. We have listed expecting impact in the short-term impact at the end of the project and the long-term. So short-term impact for the Strand 1, for example, is the new technologies tested in the companies or in the public administration, innovative solutions deployed, market uptake of new solutions, innovative technologies adopted by SMEs, then providing additional public or private funding for the investments in the project, and strengthening innovation diffusion channels. For the Strand 2A, short-term impact is very similar, with addition of these 3 points in bold, and is focusing more in the creation of new value chains in less developed regions, in applications and deployment of innovative technologies and solutions that are new to the region in less developed regions, and to exploitation of research results. Regarding the long-term impact, Strand 2.1 is basically focused on increasing innovation capacity across EU regions, increasing competitiveness and resilience of EU value chains, increase productivity and efficiency, improved public services, digital skills, and so on. And for the Strand 2A, the expected impact is very similar, with addition to the reducing the innovation divide between more developed regions and less developed regions. The more detailed list of expected impact you can find in the call text. Next slide, please. Eligible activities are basically the same for the both strands, for Strand 1 and Strand 2A. Selected projects will be implemented through an investment portfolio approach, which foresees the identification of a number of investment-ready sub-projects that address one or several bottlenecks in the value chain that is identified in the application. The project application must clearly describe the progress from innovation towards commercialization and upscaling of innovative ideas and products to the market. The activities for the both strands basically include demonstration, testing, and piloting activities by companies, large-scale product validation and market replication, which is new to Europe or new to the application sector. Then adaptation of existing prototypes and tailoring them to the company's needs for the demonstration in the real environment. And for example, test beds and complementary activities needed to improve regulations, standards, and to remove barriers and bottlenecks for innovation. And all those proposed activities are instrumental and very important to bring innovative ideas and new products to the market. New slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. So there are two types of the support. Financial support, firstly, that is direct funding to the partners in the consortium, to the consortium beneficiaries. And if project decides so, direct financial support is also dedicated to the third parties through the cascade funding, which is a financial support to third parties. But this financial support to third parties is not obligatory, is optional. Also, different support actions are very encouraged in the projects, particularly when aimed at replicating project outcomes in less developed regions. These are the so-called advisory support activities, like, for example, IPR, standardization, certification, and networking activities, like, for example, matchmaking for market penetrations, trainings, and different other activities like peer learning, for example. But this advisory and support activities will only be eligible in combination with the implementation of the tangible and non-tangible investments. There are also some specific requirements. Two are the same and one is new. So the first requirement is that minimum 70% of the total eligible cost must be allocated to the investments in companies, either to the small and medium-sized companies that are direct partners in the consortium, either through the financial support to third parties, if the project decide to have one, or through the non-financial support provided to the SMEs belonging to the portfolio. In 2024 calls, the novelty is that at least 50% of the total eligible cost shall be incurred in less developed regions. And the third specific requirement is that if projects decide to introduce financial support to third parties, this budget for FSTP cannot go beyond 30% of the total eligible costs. Next slide, please. These are the key performance indicators that also projects will have to indicate while submitting their project proposal. There are 8 key performance indicators like location, interregional dimension, which means basically number of more developed regions or less developed regions on NUTS 1 or NUTS 2 level. Then a type of project participants, either they are small, medium-sized enterprises, big companies, public authorities, research organizations, and end users and others. Then it's innovation dimension, social economic benefits, like, for example, number of value chains, investments in the portfolio, number of new regions and new value chains created. Then employment means how many jobs will be created at the end of the project. Then investment dimension, and KPIs related to IPR and to gender balance. Next slide, please. So if I go back to the first key performance indicator, interregional dimension, we are basically expecting that the applicants come from the quadruple helix partnerships. Quadruple helix means that partners are coming from public authorities, from industry, business associations, clusters, SMEs. They are coming from universities or research institutes and from also end users. It is also very important that interregional innovation investments in the value chains are interrelated. So these sub projects should not be standalone, but it has to be related somehow. The investments have to be at appropriate NUTS level. Be careful also on the minimum conditions in terms of ecosystem involved. There are different conditions in the Strand 1 and in the Strand 2A. And we are also expecting that the consortium partners must cover both demand and supply side of the innovation. Next slide, please. So this slide is about like describing a little bit more about investment dimension of the key performance indicators. Here, investments could be either tangible or intangible. Applications will have to prove and justify the investments in the market analysis or in a business and investment plan. That is, for example, also the obligatory deliverable. Then applications will have to indicate what is the time to market, basically how long will they need to mature their investments, starting with with the TRL6. Then they will have to define if there are any public or private investments additional to EU funding that will leverage by the projects. Then either their investment projects are on the regional, national, or European level. What is the portfolio balance between more developed regions and less developed regions? And of course, evidence-based territorial impact. Next slide, please. So also in the I3 instrument, the innovation is defined, it has the same definition as is defined in the Oslo manual. So there could be different types of innovation. A product innovation, which means new products and services or significantly improved products and services, then new or significantly improved processes, different market innovations, and different organizational methods, business practices, workplaces, and so on. Next slide, please. And with this slide, then I would like to pass the floor to my colleague, Virginie Perron, who is going to continue with the introduction of the I3 Strand 1 and Strand 2A calls. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Maya. Good morning to everybody. So indeed, I will continue this presentation, starting with some information on the project budget, duration, and funding rate. So for this year, for Strand 1, we have a budget, an available budget of 31 million euros. For Strand 2A, we have 36 million euros available. So in terms of project size or project budget, so it will be the same for the two strands. So there are no differences anymore. So we expect project budgets between 2 and 10 million euros, but you are free to propose other amounts if these are duly justified in the proposal. So in terms of duration, well, the project duration is expected to be between 18 and 36 months. So the code text says that in case the proposal is selected and then the project starts and is implemented, you will have the possibility to request an extension of the duration by means of amendment. But I think at the application stage, we do not expect project's duration below 18 months or above 36 months. And about the funding rate, so the funding rate for all cost categories is 70% of the total eligible cost, except for FSTP, which is now 100%. This was already changed last year, actually. So in the next slide, I will give you some information about the differences between the consortium composition. So yes, the requirements are different between Strand 1 and Strand 2A. So in Strand 1, there must be at least 5 independent legal entities established in 5 different regions of at least 3 eligible countries. And at least 2 of the 5 legal entities must come from less developed regions. And in Strand 2A, there must be at least 3 independent legal entities established in 3 different regions in at least 2 eligible countries. And the consortium shall represent at least 1 more developed regions and must have a strong involvement of less developed regions and focus on their needs. So as Tomislav mentioned a bit before, so in the current projects we have consortium which are quite small, and we have some that are quite big with more than 30, 40 partners. So you have, if you intend to apply, you have to consider that as well, because the more partners you have, the more time it will demand for the coordinator to manage. So you should really see the added value and really consider the size of a good consortium, I would say. And in terms of the consortium coordinator, so coming back to that, so now this has changed. This is new this year. So it must be either a public body or an entity that is entrusted by national or regional governments to develop or implement innovation and investment actions for SMEs, such as cluster organizations, development agencies, or innovation agencies. So now in the next slide, we will have a look at the award criteria. So a big change this year indeed is that we will now go for a one-step evaluation procedure. In the past, there used to be 2 steps. It was extremely long. So now indeed you will submit your proposal in December, and you will get a reply in much shorter time than before. So this was the first change, the one-step evaluation procedure. But then we have also changed the weight of one award criteria. So these award criteria are the same than before. So there are 4. So relevance. So with relevance, the experts, the evaluators, will check whether the proposal matches the objectives of the call text, the level of participation of less developed regions and outermost regions, the relevance of the proposed innovation, the novelty and ambition. Under quality, in the second criterion, the experts will check the quality of the consortium and the project teams, the procedures and problem-solving mechanisms, the technical quality, the logical frame concept, the methodology, timetable, risk management that has been defined. In the third criteria, cost effectiveness, the value for money will be checked, basically. Also whether there is sufficient appropriate budget for proper implementation, and yes, the cost effectiveness in general. And in the last criterion, so which is impact, what will be checked will be the ambition and expected long-term impact, the dissemination exploitation strategy that will be proposed, the potential for replication and perspectives for upscaling in less developed regions, and the sustainability of results after the EU funding ends. So you see, in terms of scoring, so what has changed is the weight of impact and relevance. So now the maximum score you could get for relevance is 10, whereas for the 3 other criteria, the maximum score is 5. So we have changed that from before. It used to be impact, which had a bigger score. So we changed that to relevance for the reasons that were explained before by Tomislav. So also keep in mind the overall pass scores. So the maximum maximum score you could get would be 25, but the minimum pass score is not half of that. It's 17.5, so the pass scores. So this is so just having an average mark is not enough to go for to be selected. So in the next slide, we will look at the payment arrangements. So indeed, there is something new, and I think it will make applicants happy. But let's start with the pre-financing. So as in the past, the selected proposals will receive pre-financing, which will represent 70% of the total grant amount, and it will be paid just after the signature of the grant agreement. Then what is new is that for the new projects to be funded, they will receive an interim payment. So and the amount of the pre-financing and the interim payment will not exceed 90% of the total grant amount. And this will be paid around the middle of the project. So giving you some more cash flow to continue in the second half of the project. And at the very end, after reception of the final report, you will get the balance of the payment. So 3 payments in total will be made to the new projects that will be selected. So in the next slides, we'll have a look at the mandatory documents and annexes that you will have to submit with your proposal. So the first one is the application form part A. So with administrative information about all the participants in the consortium, including the budget, if I'm not mistaken. In the summary budget. In the application form part B, so this is where you will provide technical description of the project. So we have also increased that to 70 pages because before it was 60 pages, and we thought that with such complex and ambitious projects, the more pages we could give you, the better it would be. So this has been increased to 70 pages. And then the other mandatory document is the part C with additional project data on TRL, innovation types, nuts level, etc. And then you have also some mandatory annexes to add with your proposal. So the first one will be the detailed budget table, for which a template is available on the call page of the portal, and my colleague Jana will present it into more details just after me. So the second mandatory annex is the CVs with a short outline. So it doesn't have to be the full CVs, but short outlines of the core project team in all the participants in the consortium. Then you should also upload an outline of the project exploitation plan in view of commercialization and upscaling. And the other thing that is new, that is replacing the endorsement letter, is the self-declaration that has only to be filled in and signed by the coordinator to confirm the alignment of the proposal with national, regional, S3 policies, strategies, and priorities of all member states and regions represented by organizations participating in the proposal. And for this, there is a template available in the document section of the call text, and the name of this document is Compliance Declaration Regarding Smart Specializations Authority. So in the next slide, I will present the mandatory deliverables for the projects. So this, just to be clear, so these are these deliverables. This will have to be delivered by the projects that will be selected for funding throughout project implementation. But of course, it's better if you already plan them in the proposal, because they will have to be delivered. So you should foresee them under your different work packages. So the mandatory deliverables for the projects funded under Strand 1 and 2A are a business and investment plan, a report on the implementation of the business investments belonging to the portfolio, an annual report on the engagement with managing authorities of ERDF programs and the authorities responsible for S3 in the regions represented in the consortium. I think this one is new, if I'm not mistaken. Then an assessment of the technology readiness, investment readiness, and market readiness at the end of the project. The list of remaining bottlenecks, a data management plan, a full dissemination exploitation plan, and a yearly report for cumulative payments for projects which will receive more than 5 million euros of EU grant. So there are also some templates available for some of these deliverables, but I think that really at proposal stage, you should just consider adding them in the list of deliverables, and then, as I said, they will have to be delivered if the proposal is selected for funding. So in the next slide, we have just a recap of what is new in the 2024 calls compared to the previous years. So the one-step evaluation, as I said before, it was 2 steps. The proposals limit increased from 60 to 70 pages. And also, if I'm not mistaken, we have also added in this Part B application form a template with person months for you to indicate the human resources that will be allocated to each work packages, because we think that this is really, and the evaluators also ask for such a table, so it gives a clearer idea on the human resources that will have to be allocated, that will be allocated to by each partner to each work package. Then another change is the weight of the evaluation criteria. Impact now is from 10 to 5 points, and the relevance has been increased to 10 points. So we have added this interim payment together with an interim report. So so it's true that in order to get the interim payment, you will have to prepare a formal interim report. So there is no more progress report as it used to be in the previous calls. So there is no more endorsement letter to submit, but a self-declaration by the coordinator only. So another condition that we put is that minimum 50% of the total eligible cost shall be incurred in less developed regions by consortium partners. And yes, and the status of the coordinator, the fact that it should now be a public body or an entity entrusted by a national or a regional government. So in the next slide, we'll see the indicative timeline for this call. So the call opened last week on the 6th of June. So the call, the 2 calls closed on the 5th of December at 5 p.m. So the evaluation will take place between December 2024 and April 2025. So we expect to send the evaluation results later in May 2025. Then we'll start the grant agreement preparation. We expect to finalize it in August with the signature of the grant agreements, so that the new projects to be selected could start in the autumn of 2025. So just last few slides afterwards, after this one, with tips for applicants for you. So really, the first tip I could give you is really, first of all, to read all the documents. I think that before contacting us with questions, really read the call text. You will, yes, and on this call page, we have put many other documents. So if you really look carefully at the documents, I'm sure that you will already find quite a lot of information. So that's the first thing. Look really, and based on that, you will be able to check whether your organization is eligible, whether the consortium that you want to set up is in line with the requirements, whether the coordinator has a status that is compatible with our requirements, and etc. So really read carefully the documents. You should not repeat in the proposal what is in the call text. It should really be specific to what you intend to do. Please keep in mind that indeed there should be a difference between applying to the strand 1 call or to the strand 2A call. So my colleague Valentina after me will just explain better the differences between the two calls. Also, we have this annotated model grant agreement, which is very useful with a lot of explanation, details on cost eligibility, on everything, you know, payments and so on. So I really invite you to have a look. So in the proposal template, you will see under each section there is explanation of what should be written. So really read what is there. Read the instructions. So the award criteria, of course, you should pay attention to that. And then there is also on the call page quite a lot of documents related to policy and regulatory background. So I invite you to look at them and also consider the difference between I3 and other EU programs like Horizon and other. Here we have a strong focus on cohesion. So really, I'm not going to read all what is in the orange box, but really we are talking here about concrete investment, improving existing value chains, and really the cohesion dimension is really a very important fact here with these calls. So in the next slide, just when you write the proposal, think about the evaluators. So of course you shouldn't get in touch with them. You should put yourself in their shoes. So I think this is very important. So really, when you write the proposal, when you prepare the work packages and deliverables, really you should really insist and really try to make the connections between the work packages clear, so we understand how they complement each other, because sometimes in some proposals we don't have that, we don't understand how they interrelate. So I think this is really important. And in terms of deliverables, yes, it's not necessary to have as many deliverables as possible, but that they make sense, that they relate to the tasks that you will be implementing. So this is really important. The consistency, I would say, of the proposal as a whole has to be obvious for the evaluators. So I've already mentioned that the maximum number of pages in the part B is 70 pages. You should not delete any parts of the template. You should not change the format. So you should write reader friendly. Really, of course, before submitting the application, the proposal, make sure that you have uploaded all the mandatory documents and annexes, otherwise the proposal may just not be admissible. So the budget is entered twice actually. So there's a table, a summary table in part A, and then you have the detailed budget table to upload. So make sure that the numbers indicated in these two sections, in these two different parts, they match, because otherwise then we will have some questions, there will be issues. And then do not put images just for the sake of filling in the page. So it has to, I mean, images and charts and so on, they must make sense, and maybe if they summarize the project, this is really useful, but not more than that. And then in the next slide, and which will be my last slide, but some final tips. Don't be over ambitious. I think the proposal, you should be able to carry out the work that you will write. So it should really be realistic. You should look for the right partners in the consortium. So if you need help in finding partners, we have on the on the funding and tender portal a partner search database. You can also turn to the I3 community of practice, the Enterprise Europe networks, and many other support organizations probably can support you with that. So if you have questions on the call, so Strand 1 or 2A call, so you should send your questions through the portal, and then they will come to us and we will reply to them on the portal as well. And you can submit your questions up to 3 days before the call deadline. And then, yes, consult the documents that are available on the call pages. So there are several online manual, S3 community of practice, call page, and all the annexes. And what we have prepared, and it's not available yet, but we hope to publish it on the call page next week, is a new document that will be called Further Clarifications on the Calls IS3 2024 Strand 1 and Strand 2A, which is a kind of compilation of the questions we received in the previous years on the same calls and that are still relevant for this call. So we really invite you to read this document to start with, as you may already find some answers to your question. So thanks a lot. So I think this was my final slide. So now I will pass the floor to my colleague Valentina to explain to you the differences between the two strands. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Virginie. Good morning, everybody. So I will try to recap a little bit what my colleagues Virginie and Maya explained to you, and in particular highlighting the differences between the two strands. In terms of general objectives, the Strand 1 is more focusing on the competitiveness and resilience of EU value chains in shared smart specialization areas, while the Strand 2A is more focusing on the creation of new value chains in less developed regions. So in terms of objectives, it must be clear that on one end, we look at European competitiveness, and on the other end, we look at the development of less developed regions. In terms of innovation dimension, for the Strand 1, the instrument really tried to de-risk business investments to maximize the exploitation of technologies and solutions that are developed in Europe, again, related to the competitiveness. In the Strand 2A, we are focusing on interconnecting less developed regions and more developed regions in terms of also connections between innovation followers and innovation leaders. Concerning the value chain dimension, this Strand 1 is focusing on value chain related investments that can create an EU added value, which include the creation of value also for less developed regions. But the main goal is to make EU value chains more competitive at the global level. For the Strand 2A, the value chain dimension is more related to the creation of those new value chains in less developed regions that might include the promotion of foreign-driven investment value chains in those less developed regions. Next slide, please. Concerning innovation, the Strand 1 is more about innovation creation. and the Strand 2A is more about innovation diffusion. We got a question in via Slido about a better definition of innovation diffusion. So when we talk about innovation creation, we talk about something that is new to Europe or new to the application sector, basically valorization of the research results, increasing the technology readiness of a certain solution, and we talk about exploitation and deployment strategies in the internal market and outside Europe. When we talk about innovation diffusion, we talk about exploitation of research results, the application of innovative solutions in less developed regions, so something that might already exist in a more developed regions of Europe that is transferred to a less developed region. This can be in the same sector or may also maybe applying an existing key enabling technology to another sector in a less developed region. So there is the concept of new to the region and new to the application sector. Another aspect is related to the adoption and penetration of technologies, and is more related to innovation diffusion. Concerning the expected impact, of course, it must be explained and related to the twin transition, because two of the key priorities of R3 are digital and green transition, but also to the efficiency and sustainability and competitiveness of the EU manufacturing sector, which is the other main priority. So again, focus on increasing competitiveness, increasing innovation, and increasing business investment in Europe. For the Strand 2A, here we have more a dimension related to the creation of the value chain. So again, contribution to the twin transition and to the competitiveness of the manufacturing sector, but you do not have to forget to put a focus also on demonstrating how the project is contributing to reduce the innovation divide and to reduce the disparities between more developed regions and less developed regions. This is key for the Strand 2A. And that's all from my side. If you have questions, we are of course happy to reply to your question at the end of the presentation.
Many thanks, Valentina, for this intervention. And now it's a pleasure for me, after having talked about the core documents and the content part, to come to something that is very important for you as well, because it takes a lot of your time in your preparation of the applications. It's a pleasure for me to introduce Jana Dobiasova from our financial services to discuss and to explain the detailed budget table. Jana, you have the floor.
So good morning, everyone. As introduced by my colleagues, I will now present the financial provisions applicable to this call, with the focus on how to fill in the detailed budget table, which is a mandatory part of your proposals. Next slide, please. So I will start with the financial documents that need to be submitted. These are two documents that you need to prepare. First one is the summarized estimated budget table, and then the detailed budget table that I will focus on later in my presentation. You will have to prepare the detailed budget table first, following a template that is available in Part B of the application. This is a mandatory annex and has to be uploaded as part of your proposal in the allowed format, which should be specified in the call text. You will then finalize the summarized budget table from Part A, and this one is filled in directly online. You need to keep in mind that the amounts or the data entered in the summarized budget table must correspond to the amounts that are calculated in the detailed budget table. And in case of discrepancies, know that the amounts in the online summarized budget table will prevail. Next slide, please. So the detailed budget table is structured in different Excel sheets. You will see that there are a couple of introductory Excel sheets which are not to be submitted. These are sheet 1 In sheet 2, you have to add all the work packages that will be included in your project, and then click next. Then you will start filling in the other Excel sheets, mainly sheet 3 and 5, which are to be filled in manually by either one of the partners or the coordinator, and then sheet 4, which is generated automatically for each partner. But these 3 are then to be submitted as one PDF document merged for everyone. Next slide, please. So the most important is sheet 3, which is the detailed budget table per partner. So you will have to present one complete detailed table per each participant. And if there's affiliated entity, also for affiliated entities. Always keep in mind that this budget table needs to be based on detailed, reasonable, and accurate estimates. You will see that the budget table is broken down by cost category and the work packages. And please keep in mind that for technical reasons, the number of work packages has to be the same in all cost categories. So even if you are not budgeting cost in a certain cost category, the work package will always appear there. You will just leave it empty and not encode any costs. That's all right. Next slide, please. Then when it comes to the other important sheets from the template, so you have sheet 4, which is a consolidated table per participant. This table is, as I said, calculated automatically by the system, but you always need to double check that you have sheet 3 and 4 for all participants, meaning that if you have 10 partners in the project, you need to have 10 detailed budget tables per participant, followed by 10 consolidated tables per each participant. Then sheet 5 is a consolidated table per project, and this one needs to be assembled manually by the coordinator. And again, please make sure that the financial data that are entered in this table and are automatically calculated somewhere else by the system kind of match across the application, because very often we find discrepancies across the different tables, and then this prolongs the process of the grant agreement preparation. Next slide, please. So I will now focus on the detailed budget table per beneficiary. So this one is presented, as I said, per participant, per work package, and per cost category. Keep in mind that the budget has to be in balance, meaning that the project costs need to equal the project income. And the project cost in this particular call being personnel costs, subcontracting, purchase costs, other cost categories, and indirect costs. And on the side of the project income, you will have the EU contribution, potential revenues that are generated by the project, and your own resources. I will now explain a bit what can be included in each of the categories and what we expect from you to be encoded in the detailed budget table. Next slide, please. So in terms of personal costs, I will take you through the different cost categories and what they look like, or the different possibilities under personal costs, and give you some practical information. So you will see that the budgeted cost under personal cost can fall under any of the highlighted subcategories. So these can be either employees, seconded personnel, or SME owners, for example. Please always make sure that you fill in information in all the highlighted columns. Particularly, don't forget to include information in the last 2 columns. So these are the columns that are asking whether the particular staff member works in different work packages. It's a yes or no column. And which work packages these are in that case, and then the short description of the tasks of this staff member. The descriptions, you don't have to invent anything new. This can be copied from a part B, the narrative part of your application, but please make sure that you include some specific information there. For the categories A1 to 3, so these personnel costs, you will have to always choose the staff category from a drop-down list and indicate monthly rate per each person and month equivalent to be worked on the project. Again, the month equivalents that you will include here need to match the staff efforts that you will encode in Sigma or in other parts of your application. Keep in mind that the estimated costs should be based on historical data and they need to correspond to what appears on payroll. So try to be as realistic as possible in your estimates. Then for category A4, which are SME owners, this is a little bit of a specific category where potentially direct owners or co-owners of SMEs can benefit from a daily rate. These daily rates are specified in Annex 2A, but always keep in mind that for a beneficiary that wants to benefit from these unit cost rates, so this beneficiary has to be an SME, and you will have to provide in the description column the name of the SME owner that is working on the action but is not receiving a salary, and this name has to be verifiable against the registration documents of the SME. It is also important to keep in mind that there is a horizontal ceiling of 215 days per year that can be worked and thus declared for the same staff member under EU projects. Next slide, please. So the next cost category is subcontracting, which basically serves the purchase of goods, works, and services that are related to the implementation of specific tasks which are part of the action. You will see that in the detailed budget table, the information provided for subcontracting is rather limited. You will have to provide the name of the subcontract, the foreseen costs for this subcontract, and short description of the subcontracted project activities. Again, the only, not the only, but let's say an important mistake that we often see is that information on subcontracting does not appear across the proposal or the application, meaning that you always have to list subcontracting also in the narrative part or technical part of the proposal of the application, and it also has to appear in the summarized estimated budget table. Always also keep in mind that subcontracting going beyond 30% of the total eligible cost must be justified in the application. And you will see that in the call text that some activities cannot be subcontracted, which are, for example, the project management activities of the coordinator, and you will always need to ensure the best value for money, or if appropriate, the lowest price, and avoid any conflict of interest for the subcontracts. Next slide, please. So travel costs, these fall under purchase costs, which are basically contracts made to get services, works, and goods that do not cover the implementation of the action, but their purchase is necessary to carry out the action. So alongside travel costs, these are also purchase of equipment and other goods, works, and services. Specifically for travel costs, so always keep in mind that these can be budgeted only for personnel working on the action. They have to be justified. And as you see on the slide, these have to be budgeted as unit cost. So prefixed amounts that are specified in the linked commission decision. And the values can also be found in Annex 2A. For the calculation of unit costs for travel, these are made based on the distance between the departure, which will typically be the place of employment, and arrival point. So for example, to be a little bit more specific, let's say from Lisbon to Madrid, and you will see there is also a link to a flight calculator that helps you to determine the exact distance to be calculated one way, which then helps you understand which unit cost to apply. Please keep in mind that you are calculating the distance one way. However, the unit cost is per return trip. When it comes to the units for accommodation, these are calculated as 1 unit equals 1 night. And for subsistence, we are calculating 24-hour periods. So you cannot budget for half a day or similar for subsistence. It always has to be rounded to the nearest full day. And again, these rates can be found in Annex 2A or the linked Commission decision. Next slide, please. So this is for what the travel costs look like in the detailed budget table. Here it is important to notice that you have different columns. You have columns for potentially actual costs and for unit costs. In 99% of cases, you will have to budget your travel costs as unit cost. There are only very specific situations where you would be budgeting actual costs. So I would ask you to skim through the Commission decision to see at least a little bit where this would apply. And if you are in doubt, you can, of course, reach out to us eventually. Regardless of whether you are budgeting actual or unit costs, you have to provide in the description column the details that the heading of the column requires for us to be able to verify that you have used the correct applicable unit cost rate. So this would mean that you provide details on whether the travel is national or international, what is the place of departure and destination, the number of days, the number of persons that are traveling. In some cases, also the transport means when, for example, it would not be very clear whether you're taking a train or a flight, which then changes the possible distance calculation. And yeah, you can include, I mean, other things that you think are relevant for us to understand exactly how you went about the calculation. But it is important that you fill in information there. Otherwise, we will always have to come back to you for more details in order to verify which is the correct applicable rate. Of course, we understand that these are estimates, especially at the budget phase. However, please try to use plausible destinations for your project. Perhaps the furthest plausible destinations if that's what works for your budget. And then, of course, this will be rectified at the reporting stage. Next slide, please. So purchase of equipment is always has to be declared as depreciation costs and calculated on the basis of the costs actually incurred and written off in accordance with international accounting standards or the beneficiary's usual accounting practices. Always keep in mind that only the portion of the cost that corresponds to the rate of actual use for the action during the action duration can be taken into account. And you will see on the picture that is attached to this slide that it is also possible to budget costs for renting or leasing equipment. These are eligible if they do not exceed the depreciation costs of similar equipment and do not include any financing fees. You'll see in the detailed budget table that there are different cells that need to be filled in depending on whether you are purchasing equipment or whether you are renting or leasing equipment. Also keep in mind that, for example, computers or software usually do not fall under purchase costs. However, since I3 projects are very often very technical, it could be that you use or you need a very specific technical computers with very specific features that need to be purchased for your project. In that case, it could be possible to budget them under equipment, but it needs to be discussed and justified. Next slide, please. Other costs, so these are purchases of goods, works, and services that must be calculated on the basis of costs that are actually incurred. There are always direct costs, and procurement principles apply. These need to be purchased specifically for the implementation of the action. And here we would ask you again in the description column, always provide some details. Why I'm saying this is because, for example, you will see that the first item in the detailed budget table is consumables. What happens very often is that somebody budgets 50,000 for consumables, and in the description column, they put consumables again. So we do not really understand what that means for the specific project. And we would again come back to you for more details. So to avoid any prolongation of the ping pong, it's always better if you provide as many specificities as you are able to. Here, please always make sure that you budget the cost in the right subcategories. And one very important thing that is very common mistake, it is important to know that if the requested EU contribution for a specific partner is above 325,000 euro, which is very common in I3 projects, you will need to budget under audit fees for a certificate on financial statements. So whenever the requested EU contribution is above this threshold, we will need to see budgeted costs for the certificate on financial statements under audit fees. Next slide, please. The next cost category for this particular call is financial support to third parties, which I believe will be presented more in detail by my colleague Valentina. But I will just tell you that the financial support to third parties must be part of the project costs and has to be included under the corresponding cost heading in the budget tables. And in this call, these costs are budgeted as actual costs, with the maximum amount for each recipient being limited to 60,000 euro. And as also presented by Virginie, this cost category is reimbursed at 100% as opposed to 70% for the rest of the cost categories. Again, you will see that in the detailed budget table, the information here is rather limited. However, again, don't forget to put some information in the description column. And again, this can be summarized information from what you are providing in the narrative part of the application, but at least some information should appear so that we do not have to come back to you to fill in these last two columns. Next slide, please. We're coming to indirect costs. So these are running or operating costs, where, for example, computers would normally fall under. That's why I was specifically mentioning them under equipment. These are not directly linked to the action implementation, and so do not need to be attributed directly to it. You will not need to provide a breakdown of these costs because these are reimbursed at a flat rate of 7% of the eligible direct cost categories. Please here note that indirect costs can never be covered for the same grant by both real costs reimbursement and a flat rate in order to prevent any double funding on the same costs. Next slide, please. So the last part of the detailed budget table for each participant is this green table with project income. So this will, as I said, follow each of the detailed budget tables. And here, the project income summarizes, as I said, the EU contribution, the potential revenues generated by the project, or contributions by third parties, and the own resources or the own contributions of the beneficiary. The most common mistake here is that there are minor discrepancies between the requested EU contribution between this table and the summarized budget table. Again, please make sure this is the most common mistake, just double check that your financial information encoded in one part of the application corresponds to different parts of the application, so that we don't have to come back correcting €1, €2 differences throughout all the tables. Thank you for your attention and good luck with your proposals.
Many thanks, Jana, for this very comprehensive overview of the budget table. Before introducing the next speaker, let me just reassure you, because we are a little bit behind timing, that first of all, the next speaker will accelerate a little bit the pace, but then we will have enough time for the questions and answers for sure. So don't worry about that. So we'll not eat into that part. So Valentina, you have the floor now. Valentina is another member of my team, and many of you might know you from various cohesion policy or smart specialization related activities. Valentina, you have the floor on the FSTP.
Thank you, Eric. And you, hello again. So my role today is to explain you a little bit the financial support to third parties in I3, which has some peculiarities compared to the use of financial support to third parties in other EU programs. Just to remind you, financial support to third parties is a funding mechanism implemented by grant beneficiary in order to fund recipient companies that are not part of the grant agreement. It's also called the cascading funding mechanism. The legal base is Article 204 of the financial regulation, and we are allowed to use financial support to third parties if this scheme is foreseen in the work program. This is the case for I3. The peculiarity of the use of financial support to third parties in I3 is related to the nature of the program. I3, as my colleague explained before, is a demand-side instrument, which is focusing on business investment in innovation. In this case, the demand side is represented by companies, the companies belonging to the consortium, which are considered the main investors. So the financial support to third parties need to serve the needs of the main investors. And the sub-projects that are selected are part of the investment portfolio, can be used to complement the investment portfolio in order to accelerate uptake innovation or for the exploitation of results that can be used to increase the competitiveness of a certain value chain and to reinforce the investment dimension. Next slide, please. So financial support to third parties, I have already explained this slide. Next slide, please. It is the legal base, the Article 204, already mentioned. Next slide. Yes, as I was mentioning before, I3 can be financial support to third parties can be used to complement the investment portfolio, which is foreseen as a form of implementing the investment in companies dimension of I3. Basically, it can be used to select additional investments. Example of the use of financial support to third parties is in particular for the exploitation of results and for the uptake of innovation. Basically, the companies that are selected via the financial support to third parties receive a sub-grant to perform activities that can complement the investment portfolio of existing companies or the value chains of targeted by the consortium. Next slide, please. In terms of conditions for providing financial support to third parties, the cost cannot exceed 30% of the total eligible cost of the project, and can also be provided in form of grants. no prizes, but grants of concrete money that goes to companies benefiting from the project. The money that you give to awarded companies cannot go beyond 60K unless higher amounts are required. In this case, you need to justify. The other important issue is that in I3, the financial support to third parties must target SMEs established in S3 participating regions. It can not be open to everybody, but really to the companies established in the specific regions, and not to other sort of beneficiaries like RTOs, etc. Next slide, please. The call must be open and publicly publicized widely. This is very important for transparency, also in terms of equal treatment, and it's also important to avoid conflict of interest and to ensure confidentiality. The call for financial support to third party must be open 2 months, and the outcomes of the calls must be published on the participant websites. The call must have a clear European dimension and need to contribute to the objectives of the project. This is very important. It cannot be just a way to spend the money to companies that are not really connected to the investment identified. Next slide. According to the grant agreement, the financial support to third parties must be specify why. Like the application must specify why you need a financial support to third parties, how this financial support to third parties will be managed, and it has also to specify the list of different type of activities for which this financial support to third parties can be awarded. And also the results to be obtained need to be anticipated in the call text for financial support to third parties. Next slide. Here is the reference to the legal base, where you can find the elements that I was already mentioning before. It's important when we talk about criteria for calculating the exact amount of financial support. Here you should specify if you are going to use lump sums or actual cost, for example, knowing that lump sums can simplify the implementation. Next slide, please. Here there is a reference to the recipients of financial support to third parties. What you have to know that those recipients are also subject to contractual obligation foreseen by the grant agreement. So basically, they need to ensure that there is no conflict of interest, there is confidentiality, security in the implementation of the sub-project, ethics principles are respected. They need to ensure visibility and information to the action, and they need to keep records and to give access to auditors in case of control. Next slide. In terms of implementation, the consortium must identify a beneficiary, a consortium partner responsible for the implementation of the financial support to third parties. A call for proposal need to be launched. This call for proposal need to be transparent in terms of criteria, methodology to select the cascading company, and the selection of companies must be ensured via using independent experts with no conflict of interest. Those experts can be in-house or external, but no conflict of interest must be the key principle. The sub-beneficiary must sign a grant agreement, an agreement with where they accept the obligation, and they must be paid before the end of the project. It's very important, so you cannot wait to have the final payment of the EU to pay the cascading companies. And of course, those projects, sub-projects, need to be monitored by the consortium partners because they are delivering something that is instrumental to the investments of the companies. So it makes sense that those companies mentor the cascading companies. And also, then a financial technical report need to be provided at the end of the project. Next slide. So you can be inspired by examples that are present on Funding and Tender portal. Next slide. In the consortium agreement, you can see the contractual obligations that are foreseen for the grant agreement, for the financial support to third parties implementation. And also this need for the methodology and financial report. Next slide. Here, it's important that you foresee in your consortium agreement how the distribution of payment and financial responsibilities will be distributed in case of recoveries. And you also need to foresee how you will redistribute the grant money in case the financial support to third parties is not spent. Next slide. Here you have some tips and lessons learned. Basically, we suggest you to, as I mentioned before, to use lump sums because it's easier to manage. And you have to distinguish if you want, you base your financial support to third parties on output-based schemes or input-based schemes. Where the payment is really linked to, in one case, to the output, in another case, to the fulfillment of certain eligibility conditions. Be aware that implementing financial support to third parties is very time demanding and also in terms of resources, so try to plan accordingly. And if you do not have resources internally in the consortium to manage the scheme, you can subcontract the task to specialized companies and try to simplify as much as possible the procedure. Next slide. Also in terms of pre-financing, as I was mentioning before, try to reserve part of the budget for the payments of the financial support to third parties, because you will receive the final payments only after the end of the project. You can use the platforms existing and try to avoid deadlines that are in summer or Christmas period. So keep when you decide to, when you identify the 2 months where the call will be launched, should not be in summer or during Christmas. In terms of payments, you can decide to pay at the end of the project or also to distribute the 60Ks in different payments. Another important thing is that the partner of the consortium cannot be beneficiaries of the subgrants. Is key. Not evident, but we want to underline this aspect. Next slide. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide.
Valentina, just present the last slide. There we go. Okay, thanks.
Okay. 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 I think it's over.
Okay, many thanks. That was there, but fine. I mean, there's enough information. We will share the PowerPoint presentation afterwards anyway. Many thanks, Valentina, for this very comprehensive part on the FSTP. Before we open up to the long-awaited questions and answers session, I would like to introduce our colleague Maria Carnero from our colleagues from the Research Executive Agency, from the Coordination and Corporate Services. She works in the Central Validation Service Unit, which you will be in touch with for sure if you make it as a happy candidate to the grant agreement preparation. So Maria, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Eric. You saved me a couple of minutes, so I don't have to introduce myself anymore.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much for inviting us to be present in this meeting. So I offer you in this slide a presentation outline. We will go quickly through the role of the Central Validation Service. Then we will move to the registration of participants' organizations. Then we will touch upon the legal validation, the legal entity appointed representative, and we will see which kind of documents you need to upload in the portal. Then we'll talk about the communication, the means of communication between the Central Validation Services and yourselves. And then we will mention the guidance documents that will always be handy for you to consult when drafting your proposals. Next slide, please. So what do we do in the Central Validation Services? We verify the legal existence and the legal statuses of the entities who apply for funding or for procurement from the European Union. And we do this to safeguard the financial interests of the European Union. We have to be sure that we are giving funding to the people who claim who they are. Then we also validate the appointment of the legal entity appointed representatives, the King Lear, as I usually call him, because this person has the powers to do everything concerning the legal information of the entity. We also validate legal changes of validated entities. So if the entity is already validated, but by any chance there's a legal change in the name, the entity all of a sudden is not private anymore and becomes public, or vice versa, or there's a merger, then we perform these changes as well. So as I mentioned, we assess also the universal takeovers. So the UTRO stands for Universal Transfer of Rights and Obligations of validated entities. So this is everything that has to do with mergers, for instance. Or we also encode bank account requests, because a bank account is very important also that you have validated in order to have your funding. We also prepare the financial capacity assessment of the entities if so required. We perform ownership control assessments for specific programs, and we also perform ex post status verifications, for example, SME and mid-cap status checks, or as I mentioned, private to public or public to private. Next slide, please. So here we have the registration of an organization at proposal stage, and this is precisely what you see in the participant register. And here you have two possibilities. Either you still do not have registered your organization, and in there you have to click register your organization, and you provide all the information that is required from you. Or, like we have on the left side, you can search for a registered organization, which means that you already have a PIC number, and you can provide us with the documents to validate the PIC, or you can perform any change you deem necessary. Next slide, please. So here you'll see that when you're registering your organization, you will have to fill in the organization data, such as the legal name, VAT number, registration number, also the legal information, so everything that is contained in your registration extract, legal address, so all this legal information is must be completed. And then you also have to define the authorized users. So you have to provide us the name, the email address of the self-registrant and the backup. This is extremely important to us because at this stage, the new PIC will be on the status declared. And the only way to communicate with the legal entities is via the email address of the self-registrant. And we ask always the participants to provide an email address and also a backup email address so that we can ensure that we can communicate with them at any time. So as I mentioned as well, once you have your registration completed, you will receive a new participant identification code, so what we call a PIC, and it's mentioned declared because it still has to be validated. Next time, please. Slide, sorry. Next slide. No? Yes. Okay, here you have an overview of the validation process. And in fact, we mentioned already the phases of registration, and then we move on for the verification and validation of legal data, which we do on the basis of supporting documents, so VAT extract or VAT exemption, legal entity form, and registration extract. Then, simultaneously, we appoint the LIR, also on the basis of supporting documents, and we also perform the financial capacity assessment if needed. These processes can take place simultaneously. So once you receive a request from the Central Validation Services, which can happen at any moment once you are registered, we will ask you for the necessary documents to perform our verification and validation of legal data. So it occurs in parallel. This is why we always like to tell participants, do send us all the documents for legal validation and for the appointment. And the LIR is mandatory for all participants. If you do not have a LIR appointed, you will be blocked from participating. So this is really very, very important. Also, what is important is that all the communication is done via the participant register. So if you have questions, if you need to send us documents, you will have to use the participant register. Next slide, please. So how do we proceed? We verify the registration data before the signature of the grant agreement or the contract. Everything is checked against the documents you will send us. So the legal validation is done once only when the entity has to sign its first grant agreement or contract and is reused for future participations in EU grant and procurement actions, which means that your PIC will be valid forever. And then you will ask me, what if we lose access? We will talk about it later. As I already mentioned several times, because it's so important, the validation is always performed on the basis of supporting documents and on the basis of taking into account our legal basis, the EU financial regulation, and also the rules on the legal entity validation, legal appointment, and financial capacity assessment for EU grants and tenders. These are two documents that are very important, but we will mention it at the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. So, legal validation documents, we can talk about it once again. We need the legal entity form, and we have templates for natural persons, for private entities, and for public bodies. And you have to send us the template completed, dated, stamped, and signed by the legal entity. We need a VAT extract, which cannot be older than 1 year. And if you are not registered for VAT, we will need a proof of VAT exemption. We need a registration extra also not older than 1 year for private law bodies. We need a decree or a decision of creation for public law bodies. We need a treaty for the creation of international organizations, and we need the statutes for non-profit organizations. Next slide, please. So regarding the communication, as I already mentioned, we have to use always the participant register. The messages will be notified via email to the contact person. So in this case, the self-registrant or the already appointed leader. And one thing that is also very important, once you are notified that you have a message via email, please do go to the participant register. Because, for instance, if the Central Validation Services needs to send you templates or needs to send you a document, you will not be able to open the document from your email. The email is really just a notification. You will have to go to the participant registers to read the request properly. And once again, I insist that all the communication is exclusively managed through the participant register. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned, how do you access a PIC if you have lost the passwords, or the person who is the leader has left, or you don't know anymore? So in case you have a declared PIC, so a PIC that has never been validated, in case the self-registrant left the organization and doesn't have a backup, you will have to create a new PIC. So you have to proceed with a new registration, and you have to inform us so that we can perform the duplication. In case your PIC is already valid, and by any chance the leader is not available anymore, and there are no account administrators available, then a new leader has to be appointed. And then you can launch the leader recovery procedure, which is a functionality you'll find in the participant register, for which we give you the link, because this is very useful in case you really lose access to the valid PIC. Next slide, please. And now the guidance documents, which are really very, very handy when you are drafting your proposals. They are very handy for ourselves as well. And we find these documents so handy and so important that we always recommend that you save these links as bookmarks in one of your browser's favorites. That way, you will always have it close to you in case you need to have you have questions or you have doubts. And it's as I said, it's they are really extremely useful. Next slide, please. Oops.
That's it, I think, Maria.
I just wanted to say thank you for your attention, and I wanted to ask if there are questions.
Maria, these will come because we are now entering the next phase of the final phase of this information day, the long-awaited Slido and question and answer session. So let's kick it off immediately. And so Maria, if you want, you can stay, or please stay online, or there may be some questions.
Okay, I will stay to in case there are questions about legal validation.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Many thanks. Okay, let's kick it off, colleagues. We have the first one here, which is the most liked one. Given Strand 1 can also create new value chains and must heavily involve less developed regions, it is hard to see the difference between Strands 1 and 2A. So the question, the entity wants like to ask, what's the difference practically between the two strands? And for that one, I'll leave the floor to Valentina.
Hello. Basically, when we talk about Strand 1, we talk about competitiveness of EU value chain. So the value that is created is a value for the EU globally. When we talk about Strand 2A, the value, the creation of value must be in less developed regions. This is the main difference. In Strand 1, it's the value, the added value for the EU globally. In the Strand 2A, is the added value, the focus is on the added value for less developed regions. This does not mean that in the Strand 1, less developed regions do not have you do not have to create a value in less developed regions, but it's not the main focus. So it's one of the elements, but it's not the main element. In the Strand 2A, if you do not address this element, the evaluators will penalize you. For the rest, is about innovation creation in the Strand 1 and innovation diffusion in the Strand 2A.
Many thanks, Valentina, for this one. Let me also tell you that after the session, we will then add those questions and answers to the document that Virginie mentioned earlier on the call page, and also in the portal, in the section, in the FAQ section. The next question here is, could you explain or exemplify of entities entrusted by national regional governments? Does this mean regional agencies for development and entrepreneurship? Well, I can take this immediately, because this is basically an additional clause we added this time to make it really give more freedom and to the applicants, and to also clarify that for us the important part, the meaning of this is that to make sure that the entities are really the ones that work on behalf of a region, that in their interests, so independent of their precise legal status. And indeed, if you mention, for example, regional agencies, would be classically an entity that would be covering so this element. So we also, by the way, reserve the right to then check on the websites of the entities and even to get in touch if we're not sure about this. But again, we made this clause to make it a bit more, give us more margin in selecting those entities. Voila, so next one would be then, yes, 70% of costs need to be allocated to companies with focus on SMEs, indeed. But then in the specification, these costs can be allocated to SMEs only. What about non-SMEs? Valentina, Maya, you would like to do that, or shall I, as you wish? Anyone? Otherwise,
yeah,
Yes.
I can answer.
Maya, go ahead.
Can maybe answer that. So basically, it says that 70% of the cost needs to be allocated to the companies or to businesses, which includes small and medium-sized enterprises, but also the big companies. Preferably, of course, we would like to see that this costs would be dedicated more to the small and medium-sized enterprises, since they are the most important target group of the I3 instrument. However, we don't exclude the cooperation of the big companies as well, but their participation has to be explained in terms, for example, how they service then the value chain, which includes also the small and medium-sized enterprises. So basically, the 70% clause goes to the companies, SMEs and the big ones. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya, for that. Next one here with 7 likes is the question about the transition regions. How do they stand in these goals? Are they considered as more developed or less developed in consortium composition? Can they be coordinator? Colleagues, would you like to reply, or shall I do? Maya, you would like to do that one, or otherwise I can also do it.
Yeah, maybe you can do it, Eric. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. So, well, they are neither more developed and less developed. They are transition. That's as the regulation says. But of course, they can participate in the consortia for sure. Especially if they, if that particular entity is crucial to, in the composition of the consortium, and in order to allow those interregional investments. And yes, they can also be a coordinator. Next one would be then on clusters. Must clusters be certified by national or regional governments in order to be considered entities entrusted act as coordinators. I think this we covered. I repeat, we will be quite generous in the interpretation of this clause if we are considering that the specific entity, be it a cluster, is really working on behalf of a region of a territory in the EU. So be reassured. Next one would be about what are the specific, do project activities need to take place in all represented regions, or is eligibility fulfilled by simply having 5 entities or plus 5 entities established in 5 regions? That's I can take. And of course, you would be then there, you would have to distinguish between 2 elements. There is the eligibility. And indeed, if you fulfill this, then the proposal will be eligible if you have 5 entities and you fulfill the other eligibility criteria. However, depending on how you describe your project proposal on the 70 pages, the external experts will check what is the reason, why do you add a certain region into the consortium, and then they are not covered in the activity. So then this might raise questions. So always think about also the award criteria in terms of relevance and in terms of impact. Next question would be, last year there were synergies between I3 instrument and the European Innovation Ecosystems call, the co-fund on the regional innovation valleys. And now will this continue in 2024, and how will the synergies between I3 instrument and the co-fund, the ecosystems horizon action be made? So this one I would like to hand over to the colleagues. Tomislav, perhaps?
Yes, thank you, Eric. We can say that the ERDF's commitment was fulfilled within the 2023 I3 instrument calls. So the commitment stated in the new European Innovation Agenda. But when it comes to regional innovation valleys, indeed, we will have different other activities with them. For example, there will be this S3 conference later this year in December in Rimini, Italy, where regional innovation valleys will meet, connect, and engage with one another. And one of the main topics will be the role of the smart specialization and in connecting these regional innovation valleys.
Many thanks, Tomislav, for that. The next one is easy because we basically already answered it. So we can, yes, a public university would definitely qualify as a coordinator, especially if they work on behalf of the specific region involved. The next one would be on the cost incurred in less developed regions, whether it must be paid in an entity based in a less developed region or it must be invoiced. Well, from the financial perspective, Jana may compliment from our financial colleague, but for us, what is important is that indeed in the budget table, the cost is related to that entity from the less developed region, so that this entity will claim the costs at the end of the project. Well, Jana, do you would like to compliment or this point? Otherwise, I think we can move on. The next one would be, is there a focal point, person, office applicants can speak to discuss product ideas and check a line on program fit? That's a nice one. And I think it was explained also by Virginie in her slide, but I would like to pass the floor to Tomislav for that one, because it also relates to the community of practice, for example.
Yes, when it comes to the community of practice, you have this QR code and a link on one of my slides, so you can go there and address any question related to this if you want.
Right, and indeed, and don't forget also, please attendees, that there is a partner search function on the portal. Then there's also the Enterprise Europe network you can use in your region as a means to get in touch. Question on what are the specific project management activities of the coordinator that cannot be subcontracted? Here, I would like to refer to actually the model grant agreement that Virginie mentioned earlier on. In the Article 7, it clearly lists those activities that really cannot be subcontracted, and to name a few ones, which you will see when you look at the model grant agreement, is the monitoring the action that it is implemented properly, for example. Then the also the requesting and reviewing any documents or information required, verify the quality and completeness before passing them on to us or to the granting authority, submitting the deliverables and reports. So these are examples really that are quite important, because the coordinator is really in charge. It's also the entity that receives the pre-financing and the final payment. So, voilà. So next slide, next question would be the audit requirement above a certain threshold applies to each partner budget or at the consortium level, hence one or multiple audits. I think you here referring here to the certificate of financial statements, and I think before even passing on to Jana, I think we can confirm that it's per entity indeed. If you receive more than 435,000 euros, if I'm correct, Jana, can you confirm? If Jana's still online. I think she might be gone, but I think it's that. It's this limit. We will, but I think you refer to the Certificate of Financial Statements, CFS, which you will ideally also budget, because you need the auditor that's produce a cost, so you can also budget that in your budget table. Yeah, and so we will get back to you on the precise threshold, but I think it's 435,000. Next one, Strand 1. Is the FSTP budget included in the 50% of the budget that has to be incurred in LDRs? I could answer it, but I think, Valentina, as you have done the FSTP, I will leave you the answer for that one.
You can answer, Eric.
Okay, yeah, indeed, it is covered. It is covered. However, because we have had the case in the past that we had coordinators keeping quite some of the budget, we could not actually immediately extract from the numbers and from the description of the action how they would be distributed to the consortium. We would like to understand from you in your description of the action how the split will be done. So make sure that to explain to us, in the text, how you'll organize the FSTP allocation. Next, Virginie? Yes.
Yes. Sorry about the previous question. I think that we have to be cautious in what we reply, because it doesn't mean, I mean, except if I did not understand myself, but it doesn't mean that all the FSTP budget has to be incurred in less developed region. This is not what it can be to SMEs in more developed regions, but there are these requirements, two requirements. First, that not more than 30% of the total eligible cost can be allocated through FSTP. And then the 50% that we mentioned of the cost that should be incurred in less developed regions, it includes FSTP, but other things as well. Yes. Not only that. So just not to confuse that, it's not all the FSTP budget that has to be distributed to less developed regions.
Exactly. No, I think the question was about to what extent or how the FSTP counts towards the 50%, and I think this is clear. Yes. Okay, then the next one, the KPIs. How should the suggested KPIs be integrated into the proposal? Well, first of all, let me make clear that you will have a part C when you are on the submission tool, where you can actually enter directly the numbers for project start and project end. You are also in a position to mention that in the flow text, for example, in the impact criterion. That is also possible, but make it a bit more lively and will make it easier for the evaluators to see how you integrate those into your description of the action. So I think that is quite clear. Then the next one are startups and spin-offs eligible to apply. Clear answer, of course, yes. Valentina, would you like to complement? I think it's pretty obvious, but just in terms of ecosystem and value chains.
It's they are companies, so they are perfectly eligible to apply. we have different cases in existing I3 project where startups and spin-offs are involved. So they are welcome.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now the next one is clearly a financial question, but as Jana might not be there anymore, we'll make sure that you get an answer. So is it regarding equipment costs, can depreciation costs be included for equipment purchased before the start of the action? I think Jana responded to that, unless, I mean, please interrupt me, Jana, if you're still online. If not, yes, you mentioned, of course, that second-hand equipment can be used. Obviously, it has to be then calculated differently because you cannot start with the initial value or price of the equipment and then depreciate the usually 20% per year. But this is, again, something that is also clarified in the national accounting rules. So check out that one. Jana, if you're still there, otherwise we will go to the next one. Yes, which is when will public information on I3 projects funded from the 2023 call be published? That's a nice one, and I can reassure you that we are, I think it was mentioned by the colleagues earlier on, yes, we are full steam ahead on that, and we will be probably signing the grant agreements by the end of June and running in the month of July. So as you know, once we sign the grant agreement, automatically, the grant agreement or the product-related information will appear actually on the call on the portal. So, but there will also be a on the 19th June an event that the Committee of the Regions, but there we will not announce obviously the beneficiaries, but only the regions that were selected. So, but. Next one, will there be new calls and new funding from 2025? Yes, the crystal ball question. And this is for Tomislav.
Yes, there will be a new work program for the remaining period 25-27. It's still too early to say some exact dates about the new calls and the level of funding, but for sure there will be more calls and more funds, both for these main strands and capacity building.
Indeed. So please stay tuned. So there's more to come. Now, the next one is the definition of the private and public body. Again, here we are going back to the national level and regional level because our colleagues from the REA, from the Research Executive Agency, Maria, you can confirm you are checking national regional documents. Perhaps you can complement this question if you are still there. Maria, we can't hear you if you're still there.
I am.
Ah, yeah, here we are.
So if you can repeat the question.
Yes, the question was about the definition of the
private and public body.
Indeed.
That definition can be found in the rules for the legal validation and financial capacity assessment. So one of the links that I have just mentioned, and in general, private entity is an entity that is subject to private law and is independent from the state, and the public body is, for instance, everything that is municipal councils, ministries, so everything that belongs to the state. This is a general definition. Of course, afterwards we have to analyze the documents, because sometimes what seems to be public is not, and what seems to be private is not. So we always have to analyze on the basis of the supporting documents we are provided with, and then we get back to the organization. And it's also good to know that if by any chance the participants do not agree with our assessment, we always have means of redress. So they can always provide new supporting documents, or they can make their case to us, and we will reassess the situation.
Indeed. Thank you, Maria, for that.
You're welcome.
Now, Does the for Strand 1, does the definition of less developed regions include in transition regions? A clear answer, no, because as I said earlier, there are 3 types of regions: less developed, transition, and more developed. Those can be found in the Commission implementing decision from 2021. We will share the link later. It's a 10-page document where you can see listed all regions according to NUTS 2 level, so the nomenclatura for territorial units. And yeah, so clear answer for that. Then next one is on the evidence that the coordinator has to submit that it has amended to act. So again, I see the new clause has raised interest and perhaps concern. Again, we are trying to make your lives easier, and we don't require per se any document. We will first of all we can check through the participant data management system and the REA, the Research Executive Agency colleagues. We can check your statute. We also reserve the right to get back to you or check your website in case it's needed. Sometimes it will be obvious from your name. So voilà, no worries about this one. Next one is about the number type of represented regions in the proposal calculated. Is it by the legal address of all beneficiaries? Number of type of so I guess it's about whether they whether they are located in a certain region, be it less developed, more developed, transition region, if I can understand correctly, colleagues. And then again, here again, this is indeed the legal seat is the decisive criterion, and voila.
Maybe Eric, if I can complete, I think maybe this question, because I had it in the past, is sometimes that we have one beneficiary in the partnership covering different regions. So, so if it's the case, what are we looking at? Not just the address of the headquarters. So if you could maybe explain on that.
Yeah, you know, we look first of all at the headquarters. What you can do actually is that when you enter the data for the department implementing the action, there's a distinction in the part A of the submission tool. You can mention first the legal entity seat, the address, and then you can put a bit lower, there's a possibility to add the department implementing the action. There can be a difference. So we would take the one then implementing the action, and this would make sense as well. So here again, we try to be as flexible as possible. But of course, at one point, you need to be attached to one specific region to make it clear. Okay, then next one is, can investment costs related to a demonstration facility eligible? Depreciation is applied also in this case, question mark. Valentina, would you like to do that one?
Yes, I can. So, of course, costs related to demonstration facilities are eligible. Of course, depreciation is the criterion for justifying the demonstration facilities. But please keep in mind that the main focus of the program are investments, and cannot be only investments in infrastructure. They can be a component of those investments, but it's important that you focus on concrete investment in companies, meaning, for example, the uptake of a certain technology in the companies. So if in order to uptake this technology, the company needs a demonstration in real environment, a small scale or large scale, and you might need to build a demonstration facility or to use a demonstration facility, you can just justify the use of this facility for the specific need of the company involved in the project that need to demonstrate a certain technology, for example. So, but we cannot justify the construction of a technological infrastructure that is used only partially for the project. So again, you depreciate for the time that you are using the infrastructure, the percentage of use, and of course, this must be the criterion.
Thank you, Valentina, for that. Next one is a purely financial question. about the financial capacity assessment, and I just heard that unfortunately Jana is also now blocked, or at least you cannot access anymore. And this is something obviously that is the question is here whether the startup's pre-revenue is eligible. And indeed, sometimes we have questions. We have entities that answer the consortium and that don't have a business annual accounts for a balance sheet yet, for example. And in this case, and now I'm just talking from experience, not because I'm a specialist, because we don't have an FCA specialist here now from the REA colleagues here, is that it is possible to send in, to hand in documents for as an estimate for your expected business or accounts for a running year, for example, if you were just created a few months ago. So this we can also accept, but this we will follow up later after this session with with you and checking with our colleagues from the research executive agency, because there's a unit doing the so-called FCAs, the capacity assessments. It's not Maria's unit. Yes. Next question would be, can a startup business incubator, which is a private non-profit association created by a city's municipal council, act as a consortium coordinator for Strand 1? Again, we are coming back to the question of the coordinator. I repeat again, we will have a pretty generous interpretation of what means entrusted, and of course, if the entity is linked in one way or another to the municipality or to a region and implements activities in terms of interregional investments, then of course we will accept that. Next question is on Strand 1. Must applicants pick from the limited list of expected impacts given broad investment areas, or are the other impacts contributing to KPIs also accepted? As explained in the call document, the KPIs are non-exhaustive. We think there are already a lot to cover. You don't have to cover them all necessarily, but you will see that some will be asked in the part C. If you have additional ones, you can mention them in the description of the action in the 70 pages. Next one is the call states that 70% of the funding must be aimed at empowering especially SMEs. How is this empowerment measured? Is it possible to finance large companies? Okay, I have my own answer, but I'll leave the floor first to Maya, Valentina, perhaps, if you want.
Yes, so this was partially already answered. This requirement for 70% to the companies, it's to the companies, whether SMEs or big companies, but as mentioned, since SMEs are the main target group of the I3 instrument, we would like to see more funding go to the SMEs, and participation of the large companies is also possible. However, it has to be explained how basically large companies would then perform also for the benefit of the SMEs and including SMEs into the value chain. Valentina, if you have some additional thoughts.
I would like to complement, in particular for the Strand 2A, where we are also targeting for indirect investment driven value chains. The role of multinationals could be important. We have some cases in existing I3 projects where it is clear for a certain country, a certain region, that without a multinational, sub-value chains related to this multinational cannot exist. So in this case, the role of multinational or large companies can be justified. But you will have to explain in the proposal to provide evidence on the reason why you are giving money to the large companies and how these large companies generating an impact on the regions, also in the value chain of the small companies that are connected.
Good, great, thank you, colleagues. Next one here is on, I wanted to say first that we are now because there are so many questions, and thanks for all those. It's now at noon. We'll continue with a few questions, and don't worry if your questions are not amongst those ones treated. We'll do that offline, and you will see the answers on the portal and on the call page. Next one is on FSDP. Are SMEs established in less developed outermost regions not covered by the consortium eligible for support? Yes, indeed. You can look at the call document. They also can receive FSDP indeed, even if the region is not in the consortium. And transition regions are not amongst them. So be careful about that one indeed. Next one is, please provide a concrete example of how FSDP has worked in other projects. That's a nice one. Could be a long one. Colleagues, you are the project advisors. Would you like to go for it? Perhaps one of the bigger projects, perhaps, that have FSDP? Because we are still in a, let's say, in a relatively early phase where the first calls have been published. And of course, we don't have so many reports on the impact of FSDP. Any colleague, Maya, Valentina, would like to, or Virginie?
Yes, I can give an example for one of my projects.
Mm-hmm.
The project is about recycling polymers and creating new materials based on fiber reinforced polymers coming from solar power panels. And in this case, there are 20 business cases that are being developed in the project. And those 20 business cases are application cases on the use of this material. The cascading funding is used to complement those 20 business cases with other applications of this material to other prototypes, for example. They will launch next week the call for financial support to third parties to find new adopters of solutions based on this new material. This is more on the focus is on the exploitation in this case, but my colleagues could provide other examples.
Mm-hmm. Next one, let's take the easy one here below. Can as an SME be a consortium partner? Yes, clear answer. Please read the call document. Now, of course, they are part of the ecosystems, important. They are the main focus of our investment projects. Next one here, going up here, do private universities qualify as a coordinator? Okay, here we are getting a bit more tricky. Check out whether this university in one way or another will act, implements actions on behalf of a certain region. It's well imaginable, even if you're a private university, that you work for a specific region and you have contacts with the region. And here we can also see whether we can make this eligible for, accept that. But check that out. Check out the link between the entity and the region and what you do for the region or for the territory. Now we have beneficiary from less developed region conducts activities only in more developed regions. It doesn't count towards entities from less developed regions. So again, it will count because the entity is from the less developed region and it has its seat in the less developed region. But be aware that, again, in the work criteria, the evaluators will check the consistency of the activities and the consortium composition, and try to make sure that you explain well why a certain region is represented in the consortium if certain activities do not take place there. So this, again, is distinction between eligibility criteria and the work criteria. So read all these points very carefully in the call document. If the consortium subcontracts entities based in less developed regions, do these subcontracting costs count towards 50%? We are coming back to the question of that the costs incurred by the less developed regions, meaning that the entity, the budget needs to be attached in the budget table to the less developed regions. And then how you then subcontract afterwards, that's an open question, obviously. You could also ask from service providers even outside the regions of the consortium, because on subcontracting, we don't have this requirement to be from a certain region. So again, the budget should be attached to the legal entity from the less developed region. Next one is on higher education. Are higher education institutions considered public bodies, and can they be consortium coordinators? Okay, here again, we have a broad interpretation, and as it's written here, it could certainly be eligible if there is a link to the region and the interest of the region, and in terms of implementing interregional innovation investments. The next one we had already. You can delete that. Yes, the SME can be consortium partner. That's okay. But you can delete. The next one is then, is it so that the smart specialization strategy community of practice partners have a chance of successfully applying for I3? Is being part of the S3 even a condition, a mandatory requirement? So first question, yes. Second question, no. It's always good if you network, and as we've explained, especially the S3 COP is part of that. You know, if you look at the journey towards commercialization, it's at the very beginning in terms of networking, in terms of piloting. So for sure, that's could be a big advantage for you to use that COP. No, it's not a requirement. You can also do it from scratch and not involving the S3 COP. So that's up to you. The next one would then be, can coordinators' costs, project management be considered as part of a non-financial support to SMEs as they are required for running the project? So submitting deliverables or checking reports, I think we all agree that are not really benefiting directly the SMEs. I mean, we will have a certain margin de maneuver to check the how you do the 70% investment in SME and companies, but try to make it rational as well and common sense. So it really needs to benefit the businesses, like the SMEs in the consortium. Next slide would be, is it so that the community of practice partners, and it's that we had already, so we can, the next one, what activities can be subcontracted, what can be not? I think this we answered already. Please check out Article 7 of the Model Grant Agreement. It's clearly explained what the coordinator can do, what not. And subcontracting, unfortunately, Jana's not there, but if you read also the guidelines, subcontracting are related to action tasks, so wider tasks, wider in scope, and they're not limited to certain small actions, for example, on event management, and usually that would be more purchase costs or on certain consumables. So, but we can get back to that with you with more details in our later on. Budget. Are freelancers' costs be declared as part of the employee column, or rather natural persons under the direct costs? This really, I guess, depends on the particular situation of that person. It could be a person that is with a direct contract with one of the partners in the consortium, then that's category with natural direct contract. It could be seconded from another one. It could be an SME owner. That really depends on the particular situation and relation towards the consortium partners. That needs to be checked case by case. Does the compliance declaration, yes, have to be signed by the representative of regional authorities or by the representative of the coordinator entity? Yes, the latter one. Indeed, it's only the coordinator itself. So no necessity to go to the managing authority or the smart specialization authority and get that signature. So that's really, I think, a measure that was asked for by many applicants and beneficiaries. So we did that to make it easier for you. Then the next one, do travel costs have to be inserted separately for every destination and mode of travel? So indeed, I mean, pay attention. I mean, we have the decision on the travel costs. We have also guidelines that we published soon that were updated because of the changed rates. Indeed, unfortunately, you will have to estimate for the sake of calculating the budget where those trips will be, from where to where. For that, you can use a calculator, and it may be then later during the project that you will do that a bit differently. That's no problem. We have sometimes deviations that happen, and that's fully understandable. So try to make the trips fit into your budget. That's what I can say about that. I think, yeah, are real estate costs related to building of a demonstrator plant eligible? So here, that's really a financial question, but be careful with that one, I guess, because we'll get back to you on that one. But I think this might be linked to indirect costs if it's really not costs that are related directly to the project. So be careful about that one. So we consider the flat rate of 7%, but we'll get back to you with a definite answer on that one. The next one is there any database to validate which clusters could participate as coordinator of consortium? No, there's no database, but I guess you should have a look at the European Cluster Collaboration Platform. That was certainly, I don't know, Virginie or Tomislav, whether they want to mention something related to clusters because you know them even better than me. Otherwise,
I don't know, Tomislav. Or Maya, do you want to say? Because I think that depending from one country to another, the cluster policy is different. And so I think this is the aim of the question. So some are definitely supported by regional, national authorities. And in other countries, the cluster policy is more, I mean, maybe unorganized. So yes, maybe going to the ECCP could help. But we can think a bit further about that, I think, and provide a better answer.
Yes, I think this question is related again to the role of the coordinator, whereas you, Eric, already mentioned a few times, basically the coordinator should be somebody who is not acting in a project only on behalf of their own organization, but who is acting on behalf of, let's say, of the regional innovation ecosystem as well. So, for example, clusters would be one of the typical organizations that we would consider as a coordinator of the consortium.
Great, many thanks, colleagues. Just to let you know that we are almost through. We have 8 questions to go. Still 144 participants, external participants. Many thanks for staying with us. You will not regret it. And the next question is on, that's a classic from previous i3 instrument calls. The funding rate is 70%. Careful, not for FSTP where it's 100%. That's the first already indication. Then can there be a difference among partners? For example, a higher rate for SMEs, for example, 80%, a lower rate for large companies, etc. So for us, and Diana's not here, but we at the end will apply 70% for all cost categories except for FSTP and to all entities. So let's say from our point of view, it's 70%. However, how you organize yourselves with the consortium, that's something you have to clarify. We will not intervene in that, but we will not give you any good recommendation on that. So how do you distribute the funding afterwards within the consortium? Up to you. Next question. We have been trying to get in touch with S3 partnership on cybersecurity without success. Is this still operational? Well, this is a clear one for Tomislav. I'm not sure whether you have knowledge about that, Tomislav.
Yes, maybe not specifically on this partnership, but I know how to check this. So we provided this link to S3 community of practice, and there is a email and contact form. You can ask people behind the secretariat, and I'm sure that they will provide you with the answer.
I can maybe complement the answer given by Tomislav. This partnership used to be coordinated by EXO, the European Cybersecurity Organization. So they were the coordinators, and they were supported by Brittany, the region of Brittany. So if you will contact the community of practice, they will facilitate the contact. They will ensure that if the coordinator, the original coordinator, is not willing to go on with the coordination, they can try to find a way to identify a new region for relaunching the partnership and for coordinating the partnership. So my colleagues from DG Regio will help you in this connection.
Valentina, please stay tuned because next one is definitely for you. Could you clarify the mandatory deliverable list of remaining bottlenecks? Also classic.
Yes. So remaining bottlenecks means I can give you a concrete example. So when at the end of the project you have you went through the validation and demonstration of your technology, your innovation, your process, your product in real environment, small scale, large scale, you might encounter some obstacles, some bottlenecks that are related to issues like certification, standardization issues, something that is maybe related to regulation that is creating a bottleneck for the adoption of this new technology. So a report on these bottlenecks is essential for the Commission to identify the reasons why certain technologies cannot reach the market. So it's really something that can be used for policy feedback to the Commission, and is the reason why we ask to list this list of remaining bottlenecks. But of course, the list of remaining bottlenecks can also be funding. So basically, we give you 10 million euros with I3, for example, but the investment need is higher, so you need to upscale the investment, and you need to find other source of funding. So this could be another bottleneck that you mentioned. So it really depends on the type of the project, the technology readiness level you are starting from, and where you stop at the end of the project. If you didn't reach the market, if you didn't reach the technology readiness level 9, you need to explain which are the bottlenecks that are remaining.
Indeed. Many thanks, Valentina, for that. Next one we answered. Where can we find the list of LDRs? Where you can find the list of all in that implementing decision that we'll share with you with the link. Now, should the 30% partners be contributed in cash? Could it be provided by only one or more partners? Is 10 million the max contribution or total budget? So I have several questions in one. And so how you provide the 30%, it's completely up to you. And there are several ways to do it. Indeed, in cash, could be in kind. That's something we don't intervene. Could it be provided by only one or more partners? Again, up to you how you organize this. It's also related possibly to the next question on ERDF, but let's wait for that one. The question is 10 million the maximum budget? Well, we have set in the indicative maximum budget of 10 million of EU contribution, but if you can justify, you can also try to go for a higher grant, but then of course try to explain why you need such a high sum as a grant. The project cost obviously detailed, the total budget cost is then obviously higher because you don't get 100% of co-financing overall. The next one is about ERDF contribution to a national contribution to contribute to I3 instrument projects. I'd like to hand that over to Tomislav or Ramunas, perhaps.
I can take it if I may, and maybe just I'll give you a holding reply on this. So because ERDF I3 is also funded by the ERDF, and I think you're referring to the national ERDF program. So just a holding reply. My instinct says no, but let us come back to you in the written Q&A on this.
All right, thanks Ramunas for that. Yes, and then the two remaining ones. The first one is on the experimentation efforts. I think referring to the one slide that Maya presented on the last part Strand 1 to A and capacity building. We have some experimentation. Tomislav, if you would like to explain a little bit the logic of that part and whether we will have those in the future.
Well, I guess this is more related to the capacity building activities.
Okay.
So
Could also be,
let's keep it rather for the capacity building.
Indeed. That's one way to do it, to apply it. By the way, there's a running call on capacity building currently since it's open already since spring. So have a look also at that call document. And the last is how the possible for I3 project to reduce the innovation divide? Wow, the last one is almost philosophical, and I would like to return the question to the inquirer, because that's up to you to tell us how you would like to reduce the innovation divide. But that's obviously the intervention logic of your project. And indeed, especially for less developed regions, one important element. I don't know, Valentina, Tomislav, Amunas, whether you have anything to say about that, but definitely something to be answered by the project applicants.
I can maybe give general comments based on my experience on implementation of I3 projects. So very often we see some projects where we have more developed regions that are very well organized, a regional innovation ecosystem performing very well, and other regions less developed that are involved in a consortium that have a strong potential, but their ecosystem is not really well organized internally. They are not very well connected, and they are not able to mobilize the ecosystem players that are on the territory. In some cases, what we try to stimulate is the activation of the regional innovation ecosystem in order to reinforce the value chains internally in less developed regions and to maximize the potential of the I3 project. This is a way to reduce the innovation divide, where more developed regions can transfer also concrete experience on how to organize the ecosystems and to have this potential fully deployed. So this is a way that we can give you as an example. But of course, reducing innovation divide is also about indicators in terms of added value that you can create in the regions and the impact on the regional development indicators. So if you really want to prove that your project is going to reduce the innovation divide, you should also try to identify some indicators to prove this. And you can, for example, use the ESPON indicators to prove that your project is going to have an impact in terms of regional development.
Many thanks, Valentina, and I think that's a nice one for the last question. Well, and so I would like to thank all attendees. I think we have still 127 online from the peak of 270 at one point. So still many, still almost half still online. Many thanks for being there. To the colleagues for all their contribution. As I said, we will publish the Q&As that were not answered and also that ones that were answered. They will be enriching our current, let's say, FAQ questions and answers section on the portal, and also the further explanations document. I would like to also ask you now, when you finish, to answer our survey, to tell us how you found this session and give us constructive feedback. And my final word is to wish you good luck for this call with the biggest budget for I3 instrument in the entire multi-annual framework program. So go for it and see you soon. Bye-bye.